and welcome to Grade.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Natalie Leake, President and CEO of Providence House, an organization that protects at-risk children and supports families through crisis, strengthening communities to end child abuse and neglect. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that envisions children everywhere are raised in safe, loving families, free from abuse and neglect. Hello, Natalie. Welcome to Grade.com Talks. We're excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Could you please describe Providence House for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Certainly. Providence House is a crisis nursery. This is our 40th anniversary. Over 13,000 children have been supported through our crisis nursery since we opened. And we provide emergency shelter to children whose families are in situations that might place the children at risk of abuse or neglect. Our goal is to prevent it from happening by getting in early, giving parents a choice. Our service is free. It's voluntary. We don't take custody of their children. This is not a foster home. It's not an orphanage. Parents voluntarily leave their children with us for up to 3 months, while we then help that family move through crisis situations like mental health, drug addiction, violence, domestic violence, homelessness, and get those families the support they need so that the parents can become safe, stable caregivers and their children can successfully return home. And we create that long-term safety and stability. 99% of our children successfully reunite with their parent after going through our program.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you've been running the organization for 40 years. The organization has been running, and your organization was able to help 13,000 children. That's a great number. That's quite a huge number. That's if you take that's like a population of a small town. So seeing that the results that you were able to accomplish, and 99% of children who go through your program being able to get back to their families and reunite and to live in better conditions, that's very rewarding, and understanding that you're making an impact and actually seeing the difference. That's very, very important. Could you please tell us more about how big of an issue is child abuse in the United States, especially in the area where you work in Cleveland, Ohio?
Sure. So in the United States overall, we spend over $80 billion a year in the United States addressing the adverse outcomes of child abuse and neglect in the United States. In Cleveland, Ohio, and Ohio in general, Ohio is, of the 50 states in the United States, it ranks in the 45th in the bottom 5 for child abuse and neglect. Cleveland, Ohio has the number 1 population in the United States of children living in poverty, number 2 in the United States for infant mortality, and our rates of child abuse and neglect in Cleveland and in Cuyahoga County, our market, are the highest in the entire state of Ohio. So, lots of children living at risk, living, without safety, without safe housing, without enough food, which is hard to imagine when you think about the United States sometimes. But, so Cleveland is a very high risk community in the United States. And we are working with primarily single mothers who have 2 or 3 children living in deep poverty and trying to confront all of these issues of homelessness, and then the mental health and addiction that often results from that. So families aren't coming in necessarily with one issue that is presenting safety. It just compounds. It's like dominoes. They don't have education, so they don't have a good job, so they don't have enough money, so then they're evicted, so then they can't buy food, and it just goes on and on and on. And so our goal is to keep kids safe, having them stay with us, and then keep their families together by really getting to the root cause that's creating that lack of safety through the parent support. So we then work intensively with the parent and connect them to partners who deal with homelessness, employment, addiction, mental health, domestic violence, and sort of wrap all of those services around that family to bring stability.
Mhm. Wow, the statistics is shocking. That's quite a high, very very high number, and indicating that it's not the fault of their children, of the fault of the children that they live in such environments. It's certainly their parents who struggle from, as indicated by you, from issues of drug abuse, substance abuse, domestic violence. Yet children are seeing the negative effects of it and the fact that they are at risk, and unfortunately they can't do anything, and all they can hope is for their parents to change and for their parents to learn. And the good thing is that there are organizations such as yours that can address the issues that the parents are facing and help them to elevate, while providing a safe space for children when their parents are transitioning into a different lifestyle or improving their lives.
And I would say, it's easy to say it's a bad parent, but a lot of times the parents grew up in the same situation. And so we see the cycle continue. And the good thing about our program is because it's voluntary, parents come to us and say, this isn't going to happen to my children. They come to us early. They come to us with the knowledge that they want to make a change. They want it to be different for their children than maybe it was for them. And so they're really committed to becoming safe and stable for their children, to addressing their own early traumas that they had maybe as adult survivors, and understanding how that's affecting their parenting and their children's safety. And so we really, have deep respect for our families, making that difficult, acknowledgement of their own experience and how it's impacting how they can parent their own child. So, we're really proud of our parents for doing this hard work.
Thank you so much for highlighting the fact that it's a generational issue. So majority of parents who are putting their children at risk were themselves at a risk level when they were children, and they didn't necessarily have a great opportunities or great environment to learn how to be a better parents. And now you mentioned they are voluntarily coming, so they have two choices: either one choice being their children being taken away from them by social services, or for them to come and address the issues that they're facing voluntarily and struggles, and understand that yes, I can make a change, and although I do need help, but once I get that help and once I make a change, I can provide a better environment for my child or for my children. You mentioned when they come to you, to your program, they have several issues, or it's not one or two, that can be multiple issues at the time. Could you please describe what kind of the regular case scenario, if there is such, of parents who come to your organization, and how do they see the help from your organization? In what parts of their life do you guys support them?
So we, a big part of our work is helping connect families and really understanding, about 40% of our children come because they're homeless. But homelessness is usually a symptom or an outcome of something else. It's not the root cause. So, a family may come and present homeless, but then we start to dig into what really got you to homelessness. And it's frequently undereducation, underemployment. Maybe there's a mental health disorder that's not being treated or not being diagnosed. And so it's like peeling an onion. The family says, I'm here because of this. And you say, okay, but what got you there? And then we can really start to treat the problem, treat the real issue instead of just the symptom, instead of saying, well, you're homeless, we're going to go find you housing. Well, okay, but if we didn't deal with all of this other stuff, you're not employed to get a job, to have enough income to pay the rent, so you're going to get evicted again anyway. We really want to create permanency and self-sufficiency in the solutions we do with our families. And that, 70% of our families self-refer. We're the first door they knock on. The other families get to us because they end up at a drug treatment program or mental health or a hospital, or they're refusing treatment because they're saying, well, I can't come in because I have 2 children and nowhere for them to go, and they'll be taken if I get help. So then that agency is calling us and saying, I have a mom or a dad, they're ready for help. They've got 2 or 3 children. Can you keep them so that we can do the treat? So we refer back and forth to each other, really trying to make sure that comment of safety net, it only is tight enough to help families if we're all communicating and working together. So we have about 130 human service agencies that are partners of ours that we make and receive these referrals to connect families and, again, deal with the root cause. We still work on housing. We'll still do all of that, but we know if we don't really get to the deep causes, mom's just going to be back homeless again. And so it's the permanency of the solution that we want to bring.
Mm-hmm. I really like your approach of finding permanent solutions rather than temporary solutions. You mentioned that it's like a peeling an onion. The more you peel it, the more you understand the root cause of an issue. And if you don't take care of the root cause, it will grow back again. So your approach is understanding the main cause of the issue and directing that issue rather than effects of it. And then we can see the results of it being more sustainable, then those families not getting back into situations that put them in the first place at risk. So the results, the impact is not for 1 day, 2 day, or a week or months, but the impact that you guys are working on is for a long period of time, so they can be sustainable both for the children and families, parents. We talked about how parents can change their lives, can make an impact in their own personal lives as well as their children. But what do children feel when they live in such risk environments and when they come to your organization and stay with you for a month or up to 3 months, you mentioned? What kind of services do the children get?
So, it's interesting because our children are birth to 12. So they can be very, very young children. We tend to see the majority of our children are 1 to 5 years old, and then we'll have older siblings that will come up through the age of 12. And it can be frightening, right? It's a strange place, strange people. Other children live there that you don't know. But I think for many of our children, they are living in such isolated situations. They are living in poverty. They're living in unsafe situations. Every day is like this. What's going to happen? And am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? And so, we see children come in pretty escalated. Their trauma exposure has been pretty high. So our goal is to make them feel safe immediately, create a sense of safety. They all have their own better crib. They all get a suitcase of new clothes and a teddy bear and a blanket. We have family meals together. We all sit around together at the table. And for our children, it creates this sense of calm. Everything we do, we announce what we're going to do next. They know what's coming. They know what to expect. There are no surprises. And so we see a lot of our children dramatically de-escalate, dramatically calm, just because they know. We always talk about how important it is for a child to have a schedule. For a lot of our children, this is the first home they've ever lived in, the first bed they've ever slept in, the first schedule they've ever followed that they understood. And so what we see with the children, so they're with us 24 hours a day, 24/7, up to 3 months. So they have an assigned childcare provider. So that's the person that's sort of the surrogate parent, tuck you into bed, help you with bathing, kiss your boo-boos, so that that bonding and attachment is there for the children. Brothers and sisters share bedrooms. And then during the day, our school-age children, before COVID, we drove them to and from school. Now they're doing remote learning right in our facility with us. And our younger children go through activities based on their age and development. But we do arts and crafts. We do school readiness, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. We also do a lot of screening for social emotional delays, trauma exposure, developmental milestones. And we use play-based approaches to help them catch up. a lot of our children aren't developmentally delayed. It's more an environmental experience for them. They just haven't had access to resources that created fine motor skills or to resources that aided them in their early reading or literacy skills. And so we layer that in through play so that they're learning and achieving and not even realizing that it's this therapeutic play that we're doing with them.
Mm-hmm. Wow. The fact that you mentioned the children are in need of a safe environment, and when they are at risk situations, they always feel worried. But when they come to your organization, it's very hard for them to understand the schedule, yet it makes them feel more safe. It makes them feel more in ease, and they don't have to worry about being abused or any other issues that their parents are facing, and they can focus on themselves and enjoying their childhood while communicating with the other children in the house and learning from the mentors and the childcare facilitators. And also, they might not have access to education when they were at risk situations and they didn't have necessary time by their parents given for them to learn basic skills of reading and writing. While they are in your organizations for up to 3 months in your house, they can focus on that and learn basic skills that can further be developed once they go to the school or once they go to the kindergarten or any other educational facility. And what I like about your approach, you mentioned that as you have children from 0 to 12 and the age are different, and so you don't have a one-to-all approach for them. You find a unique customized learning process, unique customized approach for them, so they feel more engaged and they feel more rewarded when they do something special. So it's very, very important to understand that. Could you please, as your organization is also focusing on prevention work of child abuse, could you please tell us what can be done to prevent child abuse?
It's really, about learning what it is. I think people have in their mind, it's just physical abuse, right? A child is physically harmed, but there's emotional abuse. There's, psychological abuse that can occur. There's unfortunately sexual abuse, even with very young children. It's understanding what are the types of abuses and neglect, because neglect sometimes it's a dependency issue, right? I'm too young to feed myself or cook my food or pay the water bill, so I have no water in my house. So the neglect is often used in exchange with dependency. Because I'm a young child, I'm relying on this caregiver to make sure I'm safe and fed and clothed. And unfortunately, that's not the case for some children. And sometimes, again, it's not the choice of the parent. It could be poverty. It could be a bad landlord who didn't pay the gas bill, even though mom paid rent. So lots of complicated reasons. But it's understanding the symptoms. And it's also having empathy for the family that's struggling. I do not believe that unless you're a really awful, terrible person, anyone ever wants to harm their children. So a lot of times when you investigate abuse and neglect, they reached their limit. They snapped. They got angry. They lashed out. They didn't want to do it. They didn't mean to do it. And so we have to get to the point where we understand and have empathy for someone reached a breaking point so significant that they may have harmed their child. Why didn't we get to them sooner? Why didn't they have the support they needed? Why didn't they have the concern? Why didn't they have a service that was helping them deal with the stresses of not having enough food, not having enough money, trying to keep their children safe, being in a violent partnership, dealing with a mental health issue? Instead, we just go, well, your kids, your issue, your problem. And then something happens and we say, oh, bad parent. And, our feeling is you have to let parents in those situations know where they can find help, that it's okay to ask for help. And in our community, because people know about us, they don't feel like they can't ask for help. We're not trying to take their children away. We're trying to keep their children safe while we help them rebuild their lives. And most of our families very much fear the public systems, right? They fear the social services. They fear that their children will get taken if they ask for help or say how bad it's getting and how out of control they feel. And so it takes very deep trust, community trust and parent trust to do the work we do. But again, 70% of our parents are self-referring and they're hearing about us from another parent. Mm-hmm. And a big part of that is being vulnerable to say, I do need the help. I do need the help. I need a place that will respect this very vulnerable, brave choice I'm making. And that's really how we represent in our community.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, the forms of child abuse can range. It's not only physical. It can, as you mentioned, it can be mental. It can be emotional. It can be sexual abuse. And we need to understand all those different types of abuse and educate, as mentioned by you, or ourselves, our society, our families on how to properly address those issues and show empathy, most importantly, as mentioned by you, to families struggling. So as we discussed earlier, it's not always the parents' choice that they are living in such environments. It's system that might be broken and they might be trying as hard as they can, yet their work is not going as far as they wish to, and that might result in a risk environment for children. Yet if we show empathy, if we provide help as a supportive neighbor, as a supportive friend, as a supportive family member, as a supportive community, then we can prevent those child abuse situations. We can prevent neglect, and we can create safe environments for families where they can thrive and be together for as long as they can.
Absolutely.
If someone would like to support a Providence House, how can they do that?
Certainly visit our website, which is provhouse.org. And on our website, there are lots of ways to donate items, make monetary contributions, but also it's a resource center too. So one way, and I know this is beyond the United States, so one way is learn more. We have a webinar on child abuse and neglect, what it is, what the signs and symptoms, how you create community empathy for these families and support. So it's join us in understanding the issue. This is a global issue. It's not an issue just in Cleveland, Ohio, or just in the United States. And it's a very misunderstood issue in terms of we have to care for the child and care for the parent and the family, because one without the other is not going to result in permanent change. And so, it's becoming an educated voice, becoming an advocate for these children and families, and finding a way to bring a solution like this to communities where families feel they don't have choice and they don't have the option to choose healing and hope in their situation.
Absolutely. The link to the Providence House website will be provided in the description. So you viewing and listening can go to the website and familiarize yourself with the great work Natalie and the team at Providence House are doing, and learn more about the issue of the child abuse and neglect and how you can support families in United States or in your area where you're from. Thank you so much, Natalie. It was wonderful to get to know you and the great work your organization is doing.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button, because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithm that this conversation is important, that we need to prevent child abuse and support families who are in need of help. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.